Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to tonight's second half. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And then finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. With that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's second half, shall we? All right, so I received an email a couple days ago, and I'm kind of going through some issues, personal issues with my child. I guess they're coming of age at 17, close to 17, 15 days shy. But I've really kind of just been off my game for the last couple of weeks. But I go through them this morning, and because I wanted to see about the live stream emails and such. And I looked at this one email, and it was from a gentleman named RC. That is what we will refer to him as. He is a sheriff for a different county out of Kentucky. His first experience that he had took place in the Rowan Clearfield area of Kentucky in a location called Lockagee Mountain, or Rock. And apparently he was 17 years old. It was 2013. He and four of his friends were hanging out, and they were kind of thrill seekers. They didn't drink. They didn't smoke weed. They didn't really do anything except thrill seek. He said that he was big into mountain biking and, just the basic things that kids who don't smoke weed or whatnot are into. Apparently where he grew up, there's a lot of addiction issues and such. So he and his four friends decide, hey, there's a couple of caves in the Lockagee Rock or Mountain area off of West Clack Road or West Clack Mountain Road. Let's go check them out. And it was a beautiful early fall day. School had been in session for a month, month and a half. And they just decided to go and do some spelunking. Excuse me. And just get out, It was a weekend and such. And they've done this multiple times in this area. They've never had any issues. They've explored a couple of different caves where they have to literally crawl in and, almost if you're claustrophobic, you are not getting into these caves. And that's one of the things that weirded him out about this experience, on top of law enforcement getting involved. So they all kind of arrive at this small cave opening. It was bigger than normal. This was about 2.5 to 3 feet in height by like 2 feet wide. Still too narrow and not large enough for me to even want to enter into. I don't like caves. And I know a lot of people who don't, even if I can walk into it. And I've had a couple of bad experiences in caves in upstate New York here. So, but they go in, and they go in belly first. He said about 5-6 feet in, you can stand up and walk around. There's a good kind of opening. The ceilings go up to about 10 to 12 feet in some places. And the hallways, or whatever they're called, he said hallways, are about 6, sometimes 8 feet wide. And it's just that narrow opening that is the smallest part. He said he had gone through a couple of different ones earlier in his spelunking era that were much smaller and that actually widened out into bigger spots too. But so they get in, and they've got their flashlights and such. It's 2013, so they do have cell phones. Obviously there is no signal because you're underground, but they have some decent flashlights. Not the, crappy silver and red plastic flashlights that I had when I was growing up and many of you had. So they immediately turn on their flashlights, and one of the kids marks the wall with some chalk. And I guess every couple of 100 feet or so, they will mark the wall so they don't get lost. And they proceed to walk down through. They get a good distance in, and he said based on the time and everything, because they had stopped, talked, and got situated, he said maybe close to 1/8 of a mile. He knows that supposedly this cave system goes like 2.2 miles or such in. And or some of the cave systems go that far as well. So he's assuming that one did as well. So they get about 1/8 of a mile in, and once again they're marking the wall. They know which side they're marking, and they start to kind of smell this really strange, almost a sweet kind of decay smell. It wasn't like roadkill or, when an animal is rotting in the sun. But they don't see anything, they don't see anything on the ground. There's nothing except this grayish, sand-colored wall and floor all around them. They start talking about it. It's a really unusual scent. And they walk a little more. He said they probably marked maybe 5 more times, so close to another 1,000 feet they're in. And the smell is gone. Like, it's there 1 second and it's gone the next. And one of the kids said he had heard kind of like a shuffling, like if someone were to take off quickly running in dirt or rock. And they kind of all froze. It was only that one kid that did hear it. But these guys have been friends for a long time. When they are doing any kind of adventures or exploring, they've done urban exploration, spelunking, every kind of, they're very serious. They don't mess around they didn't mess around because of the fact of messing around could get you killed. And, which I thought was really cool at such a young age in living to a code like that. So they all stop and they kind of look at him, and they know that he's not lying or making something up, because he just says, as instantaneous as that smell went away, I heard something kind of like take off ahead of us in the darkness on this, cave hallway. I don't know. I didn't see anything. I just heard it. And they all realize, like, hey, that smell is gone now. what should we do? Should we turn back around? Maybe there's a bobcat, or maybe there's something down here with us. They're not thinking people. They're not thinking Bigfoot. They're not. And there's been multiple sightings in Rowan County, Moorhead, and Clearfield region of Bigfoot and Dogman as well. So, but they're not thinking that. It's 2013. They've never seen anything cryptid. They've had some scary times, exploring some old kind of shacks and homes they found out in the woods, but nothing like this. They do have, they don't have any kind of firearm. They're 17. They're not going to carry a rifle into a cave and such. They do have some fixed blades. A couple of them have some pocket knives. And one of the kids has this kind of air horn to, blow if they get lost or anything. Like one of those boater air horns. And they all kind of take their knives out because now they are a little freaked out. This kid is very adamant about this noise and that the scent just disappearing so quickly because it was very strong. It was this really strong scent. They keep walking and marking the wall, and they get to this section where it almost kind of V's out, but it's not a V. They can see that on one side, the kind of V would stop at a wall. They shine their light down into it, and they could see, 20 feet in, there's nothing but an end. And so they proceed to go to the right, and they come across this kind of pile of debris, and they're looking at it, and one of the kids kicks it because it looks weird. It's just, it's been a clear path. There is no graffiti, so no one's probably been down here for a long time, and if there has been, it's been people who are respectful of nature. But they're like, how the hell could a pile of sticks and leaves get down here? The kid kicks it and realizes that it's decaying fur and bone. And they're looking at it like, what the hell? The scent they had smelled is not from that. It's nearly fully decayed, but there is that remnant of a kind of hide with fur. And they're trying to look and see what it is. And it looks to be like a dog. It's about the size of a dog. The skull resembles that of a dog. And, they're like, holy shit, maybe someone's dog got lost in here. Maybe a coyote. All right, well, let's keep walking. It's just one of the 2 or 3 eerie things, red flags that they should have been aware of. And he said that first and foremost. There was a couple of different red flags that, now knowing what I know, I probably would have convinced my friends to turn around and get the hell out of here. So they go and keep walking, and they've gone quite the distance now. They've walked maybe a good 30 minutes from the initial pile, or the first pile of debris, bone and stuff, on top of the 20 to get to that one point. And they hear this kind of grumblish growl, not like a dog, not any kind of noise an animal would make, he said. He said it sounded almost human-like, but there was something off with it. It almost sounded female, because it was a little high pitched, but it had this bass to it. He said it's a very strange sound. He's never heard any sound resemble it, but it was clearly a hostile growl, like get the hell out of here, a warning. And they all stop and flash or shine their lights as far as they can. So you've got a group of 5, 17-year-old boys standing here with their flashlight illuminating this tunnel. And with all 5 of them, the light is now, a hell of a lot brighter than 1 or 2 when they're leading the way in. And what they see is this kind of figure standing all the way at the end of where the light almost ends, but you can still make out something. It's that point of where the light, anything standing in that kind of shadowy area is going to be a little creepy, even if it's not creepy. And, they're all like, what the hell is that? Because it looks like it's humanoid. It's standing on 2 legs. It appears to be the size of a human. It's not overly large. He said about 5'7", 5'8". And it kind of lets out this shriek and this growl. And they immediately knew that was the noise they had heard. But this was something it was a little different, because it was not a warning. This was a charge. And as it let out this shriek growl, it proceeded to run maybe 10, 15 feet at these boys. They all kind of, startle and back away. And it's now in this kind of light pocket that these 5 flashlights are producing. And they're all looking and going, what the fuck is, what is this? It's apparently a humanoid. It's got this long kind of grayish brown hair, very unkept, fully nude, like no clothing. He said that it was clearly a man or a male. Its skin seemed to sag in places, like where someone would have, a male would have pecs. The skin seemed to sag in that area. Its stomach he said it was very odd looking. It did have genitalia that they could see. And it was this kind of dark brown, dirty looking color. But he doesn't recall it having any hair except what was on its head. And he said it was long, but not really too long. Like, we're not talking 5 feet. He said maybe shoulder length, but it was scraggly. It was really sparse in patches and such. And he could see baldness on its head. And as it's doing this growl, shriek, he recalls looking at its mouth. For some reason, he was drawn to its mouth, maybe because of the noise it was making or whatnot. And he said its teeth were almost a cross between a human and some sort of animal. He said that its teeth resembled that of like a predatory primate. They weren't overly huge canines. They seemed to be chipped and broken in spots, and some teeth were missing, but these were teeth designed for ripping and, cutting flesh and meat. I do apologize. I had to stop. My throat is scratchy. I don't know if it's the temperature change or not. I apologize. At that moment, that shriek had passed, we're talking not a long period of time, seconds, no longer than a minute. And they're all like kind of in shock because this thing, how it ran up to them, it looked so unnormal. Like it ran kind of bull-legged, he said. And they're just kind of frozen in fear and surprise. Because no one has ever seen something like this at that age. And they all kind of like instantly come up and just run. Is all of them run. And they turn and they go to start running. And as they turn their flashlights, 20 feet away from them is another one of these things. And it lets out just this louder than the one that is now behind them, the first one, the initial one, this kind of just hideous sound, this growling howl. And it's this one's bigger than the one that was behind them, and a little different looking. This one had the long sporadic hair, and it was maybe a foot taller than that one, so taller than any of these boys. This is like 6'3", and it seemed to be more muscular, not bodybuilder muscular, but kind of just alpha muscular, I guess. And this one has just like any kind of nothing except aggression. It's got its hands out. It's like a football player would just raw, like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. Two of the kids turn to see if they're gonna get jumped from behind by this other one, and the one kid that has this air horn, instantly, they all have their knives out, but he just instantly like let it rip, and it kind of echoed through this cave, and it was louder than these roars, and obviously much more high pitched. And it literally hurt the kids' ears, all five of them. They're just like, what the? But as he did this, the one that was the initial one kind of took off running back that way. And this one is now just like standing there staring, like at them, kind of like it put its hand on its ear and just, like it didn't know what that noise was. And then it lets out this other roar and kind of stepped towards them. It didn't run at them, but it took a couple steps more toward them. And they immediately turned and took off running the way the initial one had gone. Really just unbelievably dumb decision, he said. But they didn't know what else to do, He said, I think about it later now, and, we could have bum rushed it with our knives, maybe blown the air horn again. Maybe three of us would have gotten out of there. It would have gotten at least one, maybe two of us. We couldn't figure out where it came from, which he told me later where it did. So they just take off running in that direction, just like screaming, "What the hell? Oh my God," yada, yada. And they start to smell like this kind of hot, burning smell. And they get to this kind of opening, this just large opening of this cave, this big room. And they're looking around. It's so big that the flashlights aren't touching the walls. And they're like, "What is that smell? What is that smell?" It smells like rubber burning, like hot rubber, if you melt a tire or whatever. It was just a very potent, very strong scent. But they can't see any light. They can't see the walls in front of them. Two of them are turned, and at all times they've got, someone looking behind them, someone looking in front of them. My cat just jumped at me. Sorry about that. And so they have no idea, what the hell is going on. This is a cave that they've never been in. One of the kids, the kid with the horn, kind of saw something off to the side on the wall, and it wasn't directly in front of them because they're kind of panning through. And he saw this kind of opening, kind of like a tunnel opening. And he said something like, this way, guys, this way. They all took off towards that way. And this thing the one that was behind them, the one that had the second one, not the initial one, as they are running, this thing is nowhere near as fast as they are. It's barely keeping up. It is running bow-legged. Its legs, just everything about it is strange. The way it runs, the way its maneuvers are, the way its arms move. And we talked about that, and probably years of interbreeding, whatever, and they proceed to run down this very narrow hallway. And as they're running, they can see, it's opening up now to this kind of wall. And they get to this section, and as they're in front of them, they see a chalk mark. They had been in this cave now almost about an hour and a half from the initial, 20 minutes to where they saw the carcass of whatever, to now this V area and these two creature things. And they realize, holy shit, this is that section where we just were, that V. They come out and one of them turned to see if it was following him. And he turned as well. RC turned as well. And he said, when I turned, I could see how, as when we came to that V and we shined our light that way and shined our light that way, it was the way the wall was, that this opening, it was so narrow that it, from the shadows and the blending of the light, you couldn't see it. But it was this kind of almost a big, large circle. And they keep running, and they pass this carcass area, and they can hear the scuffling of, they can hear their own sneakers and whatnot, but they can hear this like shuffling noise of this naked humanoid, I guess, troglodytic creature. As they get to this opening that they've got a belly crawl through, the first one goes in, and RC is the second to last. But they're given the air horn to hold, because it did seem to stop or slow it down. And he said, I was going to blow the air horn, but I said to my friend who was going to be the last, blow it before you come out. And he said that as he was going through, he could hear his friend blow the air horn, and he could hear his friend start to crawl behind him. He's almost out of this opening, and he feels his friend like hot on his tail. And he gets out, stands up, look, all the friends are there, and he kind of goes to grab his friend's arm, and whatever, I guess we'll just call it a troglodyte, a feral, who knows, I don't know. It had grabbed his friend's leg, right by the cuff of his pant. And so he's got his friend's arm. Another one of their friends grabs the other arm, and they're yanking on him, and he's kicking with one leg, and he lets out this howl of pain, just this loud, really just terrible scream. And as he does that, it scares it scares RC, it scares his best friend. And they just yank harder, and he comes out of the cave, but he's screaming this just bloody murder pain sound. And he's, they're looking at him like, oh God, you're okay. Why are you screaming like that? And they look at his leg, and his sneaker is gone, but he has this huge bloody kind of mark on the back of his leg where this thing had bit him. And, he's gushing blood. They don't see, obviously they're looking to see if this thing's coming out. It's not. They don't see any kind of remnant of him coming through. They are all trying to get their friend up and moving. And they do eventually get him up and moved. They have to help pretty much carry him about a mile out of the woods. They have to go down these trails and such to get to their vehicle, and they bring him to urgent care. There's an urgent care that way. This was on a weekend, so, they're like, let's just fuck the hospital. The hospital's going to be too far. Let's bring him to the urgent care. From the urgent care, they let the doctors, nurses know what happened. They're like, this, we don't know, bit our friend. And, they're telling the doctor and this nurse, the people at this urgent care, what happened. Like, word for word. They're not trying to cover up anything. They're not trying to lie. They're, we went down, whatever this thing was, it looked like it was a human, it wasn't wearing clothes, and it bit our friend. So during the explanation of what had happened, obviously the police are called, and they are questioned about drug use. What kind of drugs are you guys on? This is a really far-fetched kind of story. What happened to your friend? What bit your friend? It didn't look like a dog bite. It really didn't even look like a human bite. And once they had gotten it cleaned up, they had kept the boys out of the room, and they had kind of cleaned him up. And RC had notified the kid's parents. The kid's parents are now there, and the police officers are questioning everybody. The decision is made, we got to bring him to the hospital. We cannot treat this wound here. This is, there's a lot of damage. He's lost a lot of blood. the police have him tested. You know, they were adamant that these kids were, you know, drug users. And so, long story short, as RC and his friends are, you know, figuring out what the next step is, and, you know, their parents all come, the police contact their parents, and it's then decided, you know, there is no drug use. An ambulance has shown up to bring the young man to the nearest hospital. And as they are, you know, saying their, you know, goodbyes and talking to the police officers and parents and such, one of the kids goes over to his friend, the one that had gotten bit. It wasn't RC. And just said, you know, I can't believe that happened. Are you okay? And he said, you know, I can't feel my leg. I can't feel my leg. And the kid looked at it, and his explanation to his friends, RC and his friends, were it looked like there was no, like if a human bit a human, there would be like teeth mark and, you know, blood, but you'd see teeth. There was no flesh. There was no whatever. And however this thing bit this young man, it bit him. And when it bit, it fully bit and ripped. So it took muscle, flesh, vein, artery, everything. You know, whatever was in that chunk, it ripped out. They all are, you know, free to go. Parents have now told the police officers, look, these kids aren't drug users. Have them tested, whatever, you know. And throughout the next couple of days, the police department, because they were young kids, they were 16, 17 years old, they contacted Child Protective. Child Protective came, talked to all the families. The kids were all drug tested. None of them were tested positive. You know, none of them were positive for any kind of drug, alcohol, nothing. They didn't smoke cigarettes. No, they didn't even chew tobacco. They were just, you know, decent kids. Few days go by. They all go to visit their friend. And during the couple of days of CPS and questioning and school and such, they had to amputate a portion below this kid's knee of his leg. Whatever was in this creature's mouth, it became septic. There was no, it was almost like this thing's mouth was so dirty that as they're flushing it out and cleaning it and whatever, it had just, you know, spread. So they did have to cut probably a couple inches below his knee down off. And he now has a fake false leg. But they end up, one of the police officers ends up talking to the boys, the four, as their friend is recouping. And they all still, to this day, those 5 kids are friends, best of friends still to this day. And they all live outside of Kentucky. They all moved away. They just, but this one police officer kind of took what these boys were saying at their word. And I guess he went and investigated on his off day. He had brought, you know, he was obviously armed. And he said that he had gotten into the cave area, was shining his light in the initial where he was bit, and there was blood. There was a lot of blood. There, it looked like there was some scuffling, from him trying to get out. And he kind of turned and flashed his light down that way, started walking, and he said he had gotten to where the dead animal was, and which is, enough for farther enough ahead to where he wasn't going to have anything behind him, but he could see the chalk marks and such. And he heard exactly what the boys had described, this loud kind of shriek, but with bass, an undescribable kind of growling, howl, whatever. And he turned around and walked out of there. And I guess he had gone and told a few of his coworkers, and they decided, whatever is in there shouldn't ever come out. And on one of their days off, him and two other police officers ended up moving boulders and rocks and covering the whole of this cave up, and not saying anything to anybody. He had heard the noise. He had told RC and the other boys about what had happened. Pretty much made them swear that they would never go back there, which they weren't going back anyway. They weren't looking for any kind of revenge or heroism, they weren't going back. And because of that police officer believing him and believing his friends and going back and hearing that noise that they heard, he ended up becoming a law enforcement officer right after he had his 2-year degree in college. He had a liberal arts degree and decided to go into the police academy. And he then moved out of Kentucky after that. All his other friends are, sporadically in the United States. He said three of the 5 live in North Carolina, away from any kind of woods. He now lives in Washington State, and his other friend, the kid with the air horn, is also a law enforcement officer in Texas. So because of that police officer believing him, he made the decision to become a law enforcement officer. So this brings us to his second experience that he had as a law enforcement officer, only a couple years into being a law enforcement officer. He is 29, going to be 30 this year, and he has been a police officer for 7 years now. So 5 years ago, he had his experience, which I'm going to share with you right now. And because he still is an employee of this area in Washington, RC, we agreed not to even talk about the location. So his last experience, one that he hopes he will never have to ever experience again, is he thinks this one to him seemed more life-changing. I asked him, I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like, what you just shared with me prior to this makes it, this almost look like nothing, but I can see where it would affect him. but just the pure terror that he must have felt and his friends must have felt being stuck in that cave. How do you, my thing would have been like, holy shit, we're not getting out of here. These things are going to box us in and kill us, So I guess he had been on duty. He had night shift. It was a quiet night, and he was doing his patrol. I cannot and will not even talk county-wide or whatnot, city, wherever. He had gone through the nearest kind of city. It wasn't really a city, town. And started to go out to some rural roads, just doing his patrol. There was some spots that, he would go and bust kids smoking weed, drinking, doing whatever. Pretty quiet area where he works. But so he's going to those spots where he could always, find a couple kids. Hey, don't do this. Go home. He didn't really bust him. He's a really decent guy. He said, I became a law enforcement officer not to arrest people unless, they're absolute scumbags, but more or less to help people. That police officer really just showed him that, there are people that care and will take you at your word, and go and look. But he's driving down this really kind of rural area, and there's this kind of old summer camp, and he's going out there. It's since out of season, but he's going to drive there because some kids like to park down there and stuff, and, just do kid stuff. But there had been some damage to some of the cottages and stuff in there. So he wanted to check that out. He's driving and he sees flashers in the distance, and he recognizes that those are distress flashers on a car. So he turns his cherries on and kind of gives it some gas, and he pulls up and looks at the scene, and it's a car on the side of the road, kind of sort of ditched like this, and its front end is just smashed. And there's two young girls, probably 16, 17 years old, in the front seat, and two same age boys in the back, just terrified looking. And he gets out of the car and he says, are you guys okay? And they're yelling at him, get in your car. There's a freaking monster out here. Get in your car. And he's like, in his head, he goes, what do you mean monster? Because he's already seen a monster. And they're like, we just hit something that looked like a huge dog, like a wolf, but it was running across the road as we were, coming across, driving, and we had our lights off because we were playing a game. And when we turned our lights on, this thing was in front of us and we smashed it. And he's looking, and he looks in front of the car, and he can see that there's obvious damage to the front of the car. And he goes, was it a bear? And the girl says, no, it wasn't a bear. It was not a bear. It was a wolf on its hind legs. It was a werewolf. And he's just, like looking at the kids like, all right, in his head, he's thinking, why were their lights off? What were they doing? And they must have hit a bear. They must have hit a bear that was just like walking across the road. Maybe it had stood up in the middle of the road and was smelling or whatever. And so he kind of walks in front of the car and he looks at the damage again, and he can see blood. And he sees kind of debris and hair in the radiator of this vehicle. And the car, how the car is, so the ditch kind of settled in, and the one wheel, the passenger side wheel, was not touching the ground. It was off the ground about a foot and a half, he said. So he kind of looks underneath it to see, maybe he's not seeing any kind of remnant of a bear or any kind of animal that these kids hit. And he's shining around, and he's like, maybe it's over here, and he's looking. And, he's like, all right, I'm going to call a tow truck. I'm going to get some people back up out here. Are you guys all right? Are you guys all right? Have you been drinking? Have you, why were your lights off? And as he's trying to calm the kids down, he hears out in this fieldish area. So it's like wood line off in the distance, but it's a field, not really a farm field, just a lot of land that's unused, and then a tree line. And he hears this howl, this just really loud, wolf howl. And he shines his light, because now he's thinking, holy shit, these kids did hit a wolf. Maybe it was, maybe how they hit the wolf when they hit it, when they turned their lights on and they hit it, maybe it went up like that. And that's when they thought it was, standing up. He shines his light out, and he's kind of scanning this tree line. And it's not, a farm field. Like I said, it's about 100 feet of, grass and weeds that the town or state would, cut down to this tree line. And as he's scanning, he hits these bright red reflective eyes. And he stops, and he sees this just jet black kind of silhouette with bright red eyes. And he's like, holy shit, what is that? He wasn't aware of Dogman until after this experience. And as he kind of stops and he's staring at it, he looks at the kids, and he looks up at it, and he sees it kind of drop down. And he's like, it's on all fours now. What the hell? And it's the eyes, he can tell the eyes are walking toward him. And he puts his hand on his pistol, and he's, kind of like, he's trying to figure out what the best bet to keep these kids safe, what this is, and how to get, some backup, animal control, whatever, a tow truck, an ambulance in case anyone's hurt. And he's watching it. His light's down, but he's watching the eyes, and he sees the eyes go up again. And now it's about 50 feet from the car and him. And he shines his light, and he pulls his pistol out, and he's got it aimed like dead center, center mass on this thing. And, he's holding steady. There's civilians right here. So he's like, I've only been a cop for a couple of years. I don't know what to do. I obviously, if it's coming charging, I'm going to shoot. But, what's the protocol? And it's staring at him. And the kids are screaming bloody murder in this car. Like, holy shit, there it is, there it is. Help us. And he's kind of frozen because everything is just playing through his brain. Like, what is the protocol for this? How do I put the kids in my cruiser? Are they safe here? Do I fire? Do I engage? What the hell do I do? And as he's, trying to figure out what to do, it drops down onto all fours again. And he's got his light, and he can see that, yes, it's this dark black, and what he could tell, possibly white, possibly gray, wolf-like creature, Dogman. But in his head back then, he's thinking werewolf, wolf-like creature, and for a split second, he loses sight of it because it's so black and it's so dark outside. And the only thing that really would catch his eye was these bright red eyes. So he's looking, and he sees the red eyes stand up again, but it's now at the tree line, but further away. And it lets out this howl again, and he's still got his pistol out, like, what the fuck? And it drops down onto all fours and runs into the woods, and it was gone. He gets the kids out of the car. He opens his cruiser doors, gets the kids in his cruiser, and he does a U-ey and takes off toward town. He's, telling the kids, we'll get your car towed. What the hell? What did you guys see? Tell me what you guys saw. Tell me you guys saw what I saw. I don't know what we should say. Why were your lights off? And I guess they were playing this dead man kind of game where they would drive X amount of feet or whatever with their lights off and turn them on. Whatever kind of game it is, but doesn't seem like a game to me, but it was something that they were doing. And so he says, all right, I don't know what we should say. I'm going to talk to my commanding officer when we get to a safe location and figure out what to do about your vehicle. Is anyone hurt? So him being him, who he is, RC, is open and honest with the sergeant or officer in charge that night. And, he says, listen, I was just checking the summer camp, and I was going down the road, and this is what I saw. I saw hazard lights on. I came out to, talk to these kids and make sure they're okay. And the next thing I see this large wolf-like creature that's standing up on its hind legs staring at me. The kids said that when they turned their lights on, they hid it. And his officer in charge says, all right, let me get this straight. And this, and that. And he says, yeah. And he says, we're not going to put that in the report. What we're going to do is the kids hit a wolf or a coyote. We'll figure it out. And they will be able to get their insurance claim. The kids weren't drinking. The kids weren't, no, they were just being kids, doing dumb shit. And he said, all right, we'll figure this out. I'll write everything up. I'll talk to the kids and their families. You get back to, doing your job, get back to the station, and you're almost done for the night anyway. Call it a night. See you tomorrow. We said, all right, and so he goes in. The next day, he actually gets a call to go in and meet with a few people about this incident. And the way the call was worded, he was almost like, I thought I was going to lose my job. But I got in there, and he said, Jeff, there was these two guys. One was real skinny. One was just real kind of pot-marked like he had severe acne. And the other guy was just kind of real tall. Both were in suits. Not your men in black suits, but suits. The guy with the skinny pockmarked guy was no bigger than, maybe 6, but he said, but the other guy was just a freaking giant. He was huge. He was, 6'3", 6'4", big beard, younger than the skinny guy. And I was more intimidated by him, but the end of the conversation, that skinny pot-marked guy really scared the shit right out of me. And he said, so we sat down and they started questioning me. And I told them what I saw. I told them what the kids said, and they saw that they were playing some dead man's drive game. And as they turned their lights on, they saw this werewolf standing in the middle of the road, and they hit it. He said, at first I thought it was a bear. Then, after hearing the howl, I thought, well, maybe when they hit the wolf, that it, kind of went up in the air, and it appeared to be bipedal, just from the way they had hit it. And I guess the bigger of the guy kind of nodding his head and sitting there, and the skinny guy goes, what was hit was a dog. Probably a dog that got loose from somebody's house on that road. Yada, yada, yada. We talked to the kids. We talked to their family. And, they agreed that it was probably some dog. And, that's about all we're going to talk about this. It'd probably do you good not to go any further. And, don't even contact the kids. Just let it end, It was a neighborhood dog that got hit. And he said, but that's not what it was. And the skinnier the guy kind of looked at his partner, and the partner in this real deep voice, still kind of jovial, but not, threatening, like the skinny guy, just said, yeah, but it was, wasn't it? It was, right? And he said, I guess that's what it was. And he said, we read your service record, and we've read, you this and that. And, everyone tells us that you're a decent patrol officer and yada, yada. That's what it was. And like my friend here said, there's no need to go any further. There's no need to even talk to the kids. The girl's going to get her car fixed. The dog ran out. They didn't do anything wrong. They weren't drinking. There was no drugs involved. And they weren't even playing a game. They were just driving down the road, and this dog just ran out in front of them. And that's how it was. And he says, okay. All right. And they said, all right, well, we're glad that, we're at an understanding, and thank you, yada, yada. And as he's getting up to leave, because the bigger guy was the one that said, glad you're at an understanding. As he's getting up to leave, the skinnier guy kind of snidely says, or we can take your badge and gun right now. And just, after everything was established, there was no kind of balking or anything back. RC wasn't, and he said, no, that's good. I'm good. And he walks out, and he had never seen those two guys. The skinny pockmarked guy had like a New England kind of accent, he said. And the larger of the guy, he had an accent like him, being from Kentucky, but a little more of a southern kind of twang to it. And he said, I didn't even know what to say or who to talk to after this, but my commanding officer came up to me and said, everything got straightened out. And he said, yeah, I guess the kids hit a dog, right? And he said, yep. Yeah. He said, all right, just listen to what they said and move on. I said, all right. And a couple months go by, and it's bothering him. It really is. It's because he's like, who were these guys? I've never seen them. I have not seen them since. And he's making friends in the department and such. And one night he's at this bar with one of his coworkers, another police officer, and he just says, let me ask you something. And he tells this other officer what happened. And his friend says, listen to what those two guys said. Listen to what our boss said, and you'll be fine. There are things that are out here in the woods that we can't explain. People have seen Sasquatch and Bigfoot out here. And yes, there is something that resembles a werewolf on TV. But as long as you don't, actively start spouting off about it and this and that, you'll be fine. Just if you ever see another one, and you're out doing your patrol, don't even stop unless it is attacking somebody or someone calls us in on it. And if that happens, once it goes over the radio, they'll know how to handle the situation and control it. But he said about half of the guys you work with here have had some sort of incident with these things. And these two guys, they come and clean up the mess. Just leave it at that, all right, RC, and you're good to go. You'll be good. And he just kind of, he said it didn't make me feel any better, but it made me feel like I was kind of like belonging now and in the club. But he said, I really do hope I never see another one of those things again, because I don't know if I'll be able to lie this time. I don't know if I'll be able to hold my, tongue. I don't know if I'll, if that skinny freaking acne pockmark face guy tells me another bullshit line, like, I don't know if I'll agree with him. He says, I hope I never see another Dogman for the rest of my life, because I don't know how I'll handle the situation with my mouth. I don't know if I'd go to the, it's bad enough I'm coming to you and, you're using my name that isn't, RC is not his name. But, he's like, I don't know if these people even would figure out this was me. But I don't know. I might go to the newspaper someday if I have to see one of these things again. And I don't know what'll happen to me afterward. And I said, well, the Colorado guy, the sheriff that I talked to in Colorado, he was forced to move. He was forced out of Colorado completely. And, now lives in a completely different state, but is still in law enforcement. And he said, that won't be me. He said, that won't be me. He said, because I will spill the beans completely. And I said, understandable, my friend, understandable. And that's where we left it, because he, I actually think he's a better police officer than he knows. Because one, I have known a lot of police officers in my life. I have, well, My great uncle was the sergeant of our local police department for years. He never moved up because he didn't want to, but and then I had a cousin who was a state policeman in New York State and was killed in the line of duty. He had gotten hit by a tractor trailer doing a patrol, like pulling over a vehicle. But beside those two, he just doesn't have that. You know, he became a cop because that one good cop. You know, and I'm not saying all cops are bad at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, he just doesn't. He just, you know, he's had that experience when he was younger. He met an amazing police officer that really kind of showed him, you know, hey, you know, I will listen to you and I will believe you as long as. And those kids kind of clued in with him because, one, you know, they were asked if they had been drinking. The girls were, you know, breathalyzed and this and that, and they weren't. And it was how he was treated when he was younger by some other police officers. But he's really a decent guy and a decent police officer. And I wish we had more people like him. Because, you know, maybe the secret that the police officers are doing for our government, local, state, federal, maybe that would be more out. I don't know. I don't know if that even makes sense, but he's one hell of a nice guy. Really just a fucking nice guy. And it was a privilege talking to him. And, you know, he's actually tried to find the police officer that put him on his path of life today, and he's never been able to find him. But he will always remember how that one police officer, after it was proven that there was no drugs or alcohol, went the extra mile for everyone. And that was really cool. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. I'd like to thank RC for sharing that with us. You know, he was nervous about even, he almost said, I don't know if I want to use the counties or not, or the area or not, because maybe they will find out who I am. And then he said, if I'm, you know, just don't use my real name and don't talk about where, use the state, but don't use anything, town name, county name, nothing. And I was like, all right. So
there you have it, folks. I do hope y'all enjoyed this second half as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.